Imagine waking up to the first light of dawn, only to find your escape route sealed off by a gleaming SUV parked like a deliberate barricade across your cabin driveway, the air thick with mountain mist. And there she stands, Karen, the self-appointed guardian of the upscale HOA community, her eyes narrowed in quiet triumph. But this wasn't just about parking. It was a calculated move in a longer game of exclusion and control. What if the only way to fight back involved rotors slicing the sky and a car dangling like a trophy? Stick around. This tale of quiet rage and audacious revenge will leave you questioning the hidden biases in everyday neighborhoods. Nestled in the rolling hills of a secluded mountain enclave, the cabin had always been Lucifer's sanctuary, a modest wooden retreat he had inherited from his late grandfather, far from the city's clamor. He cherished the solitude, the way the pines whispered secrets, and the nearby lake reflected the stars at night. Lucifer, a quiet engineer with a knack for mechanics and a deep-seated love for tinkering with aircraft models, had moved there full-time after years of urban grind. The community was governed by a strict HOA, a network of affluent residents who prided themselves on maintaining standards. It was the kind of place where manicured lawns and uniform fences hid undercurrents of judgment. Enter Karen, the HOA president, a woman in her 50s with a perpetually furrowed brow and an unyielding grip on the rule book. She lived in the largest house on the hill, her life a tapestry of committee meetings and neighborhood patrols. From the moment Lucifer settled in, Karen's scrutiny intensified. It started subtly. Anonymous notes about his cabin's unconventional upkeep, complaints about the faint hum of his workshop tools echoing through the woods. She patrolled the winding roads in her luxury SUV, ensuring every driveway conformed to her vision of perfection. Lucifer sensed the unease, the way her gaze lingered a beat too long during chance encounters at the community mailbox. He pushed it aside, focusing on his projects, like restoring an old helicopter rotor in his garage. But the tension simmered. One crisp autumn dawn, as fog clung to the ground, Karen's SUV appeared, blocking his driveway entirely. It wasn't an accident. It was a statement, a barrier erected under the guise of parking etiquette, but laced with something deeper, an unspoken assertion of who truly belonged in this pristine haven. As the sun crept higher, Lucifer stared at the obstruction, his morning routine shattered. He had planned to drive into town for supplies, but now his truck sat trapped behind Karen's vehicle, its tires kissing the edge of his gravel path. He approached cautiously, noting how she had positioned it at an angle that maximized the blockade, her hazard lights off, as if daring him to challenge her. The HOA rules flashed in his mind, vague clauses about community harmony that Karen wielded like a weapon. This wasn't the first time. Weeks earlier, she had rallied neighbors against his late-night workshop lights, claiming they disrupted the serene atmosphere. Whispers circulated at HOA gatherings, painting Lucifer as an outsider whose presence somehow tainted the enclave's exclusivity. The emotional weight built slowly, like storm clouds gathering over the mountains. Lucifer recalled the subtle slights, the way invitations to community barbecues never reached his door, or how maintenance requests for the shared road near his cabin were ignored while others were swiftly addressed. Karen's influence permeated everything, her SUV a symbol of her unchecked authority. He tried reasoning through official channels, submitting forms to the HOA board, but responses came laced with delays and denials, each one chipping at his sense of belonging. One evening, as he tinkered with his helicopter models, he uncovered old community records, faded documents hinting at a history of selective enforcement, where certain residents faced barriers others didn't, all under the veil of standards. Tension escalated when Karen began patrolling more frequently, her vehicle idling near his property line, headlights piercing the dusk. Lucifer's frustration morphed into a quiet fury, fueled by nights of sleepless reflection on the injustice. He wasn't one to back down. His grandfather had taught him resilience in the face of unseen walls. Drawing on his engineering expertise, he started piecing together a plan, not out of malice, but necessity. He reached out to a network of aviation enthusiasts, securing access to a real helicopter through a friend in the industry. The machine, a sturdy utility model used for remote lifts, became his unlikely ally. Meanwhile, Karen's actions grew bolder. Anonymous calls to local authorities about suspicious activity at his cabin, each one dismissed, but leaving a sting. The community divided subtly, some neighbors averting their eyes during walks, others murmuring support in hushed tones. Lucifer felt the isolation deepen, the racial undercurrents manifesting in exclusionary tactics that echoed broader societal patterns, inspired by true stories of biased housing associations where entitlement masked deeper prejudices. As winter approached, the blockades became routine, each dawn a reminder of the invisible lines drawn. But Lucifer's resolve hardened. He tested the helicopter in a nearby field, the rotors whirring like a promise of upheaval. The stakes rose, his sanctuary threatened, his dignity on the line, building toward an inevitable confrontation that would expose the rot beneath the community's polished facade. The breaking point arrived on a frigid morning, the air sharp with frost as Lucifer emerged from his cabin. Karen's SUV loomed again, parked defiantly across his driveway, its engine still warm from her early arrival. This time it felt final, a culmination of months of veiled aggression, her presence a physical embodiment of the barriers she enforced. Lucifer's pulse quickened. He had prepared for this. With a steady hand, he signaled his aviation contact, and soon the distant thrum of rotors echoed through the valley. The helicopter descended like a mechanical bird of prey, its shadow engulfing the scene. Neighbors peeked from windows, drawn by the unusual noise, as the craft hovered over Karen's vehicle. Lucifer directed the operation from the ground, attaching heavy-duty slings to the SUV's frame with precision born of his engineering prowess. The injustice peaked in that moment, the weight of every ignored complaint, every sidelong glance, every unspoken rule that favored some over others. As the helicopter lifted, the car dangled precariously in the void, carried aloft amid gasps from onlookers. Karen burst from her house, her face a mask of shock, but it was too late. The vehicle soared higher, the community's hidden fractures laid bare in the absurdity of the act. The flight path cut through the crisp sky, heading toward the state capitol where the governor's mansion sprawled with its manicured lawn, a symbol of higher authority. Lucifer watched from below, the emotional release surging, as the helicopter gently deposited the SUV onto the pristine grass right in front of the gubernatorial residence. Security scrambled, but the message was delivered. A bold escalation against the petty tyrannies of entitlement. In that intense tableau, the racial injustices simmered to the surface, not in words, but in the raw exposure of how power dynamics in such communities perpetuated exclusion, mirroring real-world cases where biased HOA actions led to public reckonings. The climax hung in the air like the fading rotor wash, a dramatic unmasking that forced the world to see the underlying rot. With the SUV now an unexpected centerpiece on the governor's lawn, the fallout unfolded swiftly. Media crews swarmed the scene, helicopters of their own circling for footage, turning Lucifer's act into a viral spectacle. Karen's authority crumbled under the scrutiny. Investigations revealed a pattern of selective HOA enforcement, her records exposed as tools of personal bias rather than fair governance. The community reeled, forced to confront the divisions she had nurtured. Lucifer returned to his cabin, the driveway clear at last, but the victory bittersweet, a reminder of the energy drained by constant defense against unseen prejudices. In the days that followed, the governor's office intervened, ordering a review of the HOA's practices. Karen faced formal reprimands, her SUV impounded briefly before being returned, dented in both metal and reputation. Lucifer, meanwhile, channeled the attention into advocacy, sharing his story anonymously through online forums, inspiring others to challenge similar injustices. The cabin, once a site of isolation, became